when we're having issues, we get so down and out about it. We start to think that there's something wrong with us. And the one thing I learned from that whole experience is just to stop overthinking it, just have fun. So we changed
Yes.
my approach.
Welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm your host, Dan Purcell, a Christian marriage and intimacy expert and coach. I'm on a mission to help couples have the best sex and most emotionally intimate marriages possible. Our episodes cover topics you've always wondered about and are packed with practical advice designed to help you take your marriage to the next level. So I'm excited to have a guest today on my podcast. Her name is Tilly Storm. She is a sex coach for women, and she has a lot to say about the amazing GSpot and how to stimulate it and how to have more fun in your bedroom by learning how to work with this beautiful aspect of female pleasure and orgasm. Now, for some of you, this might already be something you already do in your relationship, but I promise you'll gain a lot out of this podcast anyway. If you're new to this, well, you've got a whole new dimension in your relationship to uncover and explore together, and I hope you have a lot of fun exploring it, just like my wife and I have had a lot of fun putting into practice a lot of the things that Tilly is going to teach today. After listening to this episode, if you and your spouse would like some extra help in your relationship to growing closer together and working through intimacy issues so that you can unlock new dimensions of sexual pleasure in your relationship, please check out my coaching program where I work with you one-on-one and helping you really move that needle in the positive direction of your relationship. It's called the Get Your Marriage On program, and those details are on our website and in the show notes as well. We had this seminar series going on with Dr. Shalom Levitt about sexual mindfulness, and it's started already, but you can still join. You can catch the last recording and catch up to us really quick. It's a fantastic seminar for anyone who ever wants to feel closer to their spouse, who wants to feel more grounded, who wants to not feel so anxious, or just wants to take things up a notch. And this is taught by a professor. She's a researcher. She researches the intersection of sexuality and mindfulness. And all those details are on our website, or you can check our show notes for that. All right, let's move on to a fun conversation about GSpot orgasms. Tilly, welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Dan.
So you're a sexuality coach, especially for women, and I've been following you a little bit. Tell me about a time when you first started sexuality coaching with women.
Mm, yeah, I started doing Jade Egg Workshops at a healing center and a yoga studio in town.
People don't
And
know what a jade egg is. What's that?
I get that. Everyone's probably like, what the heck does she say? Not even Chat GPT can figure out what a jade egg is. The way that it spells it is hilarious.
Uh-huh.
It is an egg-shaped stone that you use in your vaginal canal. You do different squeezes and releases and breathwork practices with it to build sensate focus and increase your tone and strength in your vaginal canal, which is directly correlated to the length and strength of your orgasms, ladies. So
All right.
well, it is an explicitly sexual practice. So the fact that these people would let me do this kind of workshop in their studio and space was a miracle. And it's not like anyone is naked. It's fully closed. There's nothing nude or weird about it other than, yes, you are like doing restorative yoga. It kind of looks like a yin yoga class. And this gal, once we got into the rhythm of the practice that I was leading them through, she started to burst out laughing, and she was trying hard to keep it together, but honestly, I was a little concerned about her and if she was actually getting anything from the practice that we were doing. But after the session, I went over and I looked at her and she looked at me and she had this big grin on her face like, "Tilly, I've never felt so free in my life." And I was like, "Okay, great." So I realized how serious I had taken my work, and in this workshop, how much it's about not taking it seriously, and what a great metaphor for our sex lives in general is that when we're having issues, we get so down and out about it. We start to think that there's something wrong with us. And the one thing I learned from that whole experience is just to stop overthinking it, just have fun. It was changed
Yes.
my approach.
Right, right. I think so many couples, sex is so loaded. Like,
Mhm.
come on, let your hair down. Have fun here, right? Don't have to
Right.
take ourselves so seriously. In fact,
Yeah.
let's talk about having more fun in the bedroom today. Specifically, we're going to talk about the G spot, which I've never done an episode on this. It's over 200 episodes. So I'm really interested in diving deeper here. Tell me of a time, Tilly, when you first discovered your G spot.
Mm. I have 2 very distinct memories. One was with a guy that I had been super hot and heavy for, and oh, yeah, it was like mega, mega sexual attraction with him, and when we were finally able to be intimate together, the amount of pleasure and ecstasy from no effort at all, not thinking about it, not trying, like, first time with this guy too, and I had more liquid that came out of me. I squirted for the first time ever. I had so much pleasure I didn't even know was possible. I was like, "Holy cow. How is this possible, and how does everyone not know about this?" And then I had, another guy that I saw for a while who he would literally come to the door to let me in, and we wouldn't even get to the bedroom before he got me into a G-spot orgasm or ejaculating because he was extremely skilled lover, knew exactly what to do, and yeah, I very much remember those experiences with that guy. So
That's good.
G-spot pleasure is next level.
Very good, very good. But some people just have never really familiar with it, or they may have read it in a magazine or in passing. Can you describe more what is the G spot? Maybe anatomically. Let's start there.
Mhm. It's about 1.5 to 2.5 inches on the anterior wall of the vaginal canal,
That's
and
the
if
belly
you
button side in layman's terms. Uh-huh.
precisely, yeah, I'm kind of a science nerd, so I'll say things that way, but yes, the belly side, and if you use your finger to palpate the area and feel for it, you're probably going to notice that there's a walnut shaped ridges along the G spot area. Not every woman has that, and it definitely helps if you're already turned on to locate your G spot. If
Mhm.
you don't know where it is, I highly suggest being turned on, stroking your clitoris, things like that before, and that way it is erectile tissue, so it will engorge and it will make it easier to find if you've never felt it before.
Got it, got it. So, as a man with my wife, how do I know if I've touched the spot? How do I touch the spot? Can you give us some details there?
Well, you will know when you've touched a spot because either you can feel for that walnut ridgy feeling on your
Mhm.
fingers, or she'll tell you. She'll
Uh-huh.
be like, "Oh, there's additional sensation here. There's more pleasure here." It feels different than the rest of it. But if you are a man and you really want to figure out where that is, there's definitely tools that help. And
Uh-huh.
you can use fingers, absolutely. But sometimes there gets to be additional pressure there. So tools can help as well.
Gotcha. What do you
Yeah.
mean by additional pressure?
Well, a lot of times when we're talking about G spot orgasms or female ejaculation, in order to get there, sometimes, depending on what's going on, there will need to be a lot of pressure to elicit the sensation. And using just your fingers can get very tiring because it can take a while of stimulation for a woman to get there. I mean, we already know that clitoral orgasms on average take a woman 14 minutes to get there.
Mhm.
But G spot pleasure is going to take longer and it can be tiring without tools.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So this isn't like 2 minutes later getting frustrated, "Hey, how come you're not pleased yet?" This isn't that kind of a thing. No.
Oh, goodness. No, 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 no,
No?
no. If we have those expectations, we're going to be very disappointed unless you have like orgasmic superstar wife that can get there really fast, but I would say it's definitely not the majority of women who are gonna get there that fast.
Gotcha. All right. So, tips for husbands. How do you touch the G spot?
Yeah. There are several different strokes that can really bring that sense of turn on that can lead to the orgasm of the G spot or the ejaculation. I want to mention first that those are separate things. We can get into that later, but the strokes that you'll want to elicit are either an in and out with one or two fingers along the anterior side, the belly side of
Mhm.
the vaginal canal, where you're stroking it directly.
Mhm.
It feels like that spongy area. It will start to fill up with liquid. It will start to engorge, and
Mhm.
you'll notice. Or once it's engorged enough, you can do circles with your fingers around the G spot itself.
Mhm.
And what is the most common stroke is the come hither, where
Mhm.
once
It's
you're
like
on
a
it and it's fully engorged, if you want her to squirt or to have an orgasm in that area, the come hither will often elicit that. Sometimes, like I said, it can take a tool to do it, but fingers can work if you have a woman that's a squirter. It can happen very easily. But yeah, it can be tiring after a while.
gotcha. All right. What about how much pressure do I put on that spot?
It depends on the woman. She will definitely let you know if her hips are rocking, if she's moaning, if she's really into it, then you can gauge that that's probably the right amount of pressure. If she's just lying there like a dead fish or she's not doing much, then that's probably because she needs more pressure. And if she's kind of like, got these worms on her face, it's probably because it's too much and she's not ready for that amount of pressure yet. It's really about knowing your woman, being able to gauge what's right for her. And if you're not sure, ask. It's not that hard,
Mhm.
but we often don't do that in sexual experiences, and sometimes if we just open our mouth to ask, we'll get an answer.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It can be too intense. So you gotta really be present and really read your spouse as you go through this experience together.
yeah, exactly.
So we've been talking about using fingers or like a toy or tool. I've seen them before. They're slightly curved or there's a market for that. Why not a penis?
It doesn't really hit the G spot. It can hit the cervix if it's large enough and if it's hard enough, but even that cannot happen sometimes. But the G spot is on the anterior wall of the vaginal canal. So it's unless you have a very curved penis, it's going to be hard to apply direct stimulation to it. I'm sure there is a woman out there who has G spot orgasms from just a penis, but I would say that's very rare and very few and far between. You're going to much more likely get a response, get her to orgasm there if you use fingers or a G spotter tool.
Great. You talked about how often with G-spot stimulation, there's a liquid buildup and sometimes release. We talked about squirting. Some people may not have heard that before or this phenomenon. Can you explain what squirting really is? What is
Mhm.
the liquid? What's the fluid?
Yeah. Well, there's ongoing debates on popular magazines like Cosmo. I'm honestly tired of hearing about them, but they will debate whether or not the liquid is pee or not. And
Mhm.
I'm sorry, but there are just far too many women that I know of and that talk about it all the time who it's absolutely not pee. It has traces of pee in it, but it is not just pee. And the fluid is just this fluid that gets built up from constant stimulation, and it is called female ejaculate. And some refer to it in tantric texts and more spiritual traditions that it's called amrita. It stands for the nectar of the gods. It's a very sacred fluid that if you can get a woman to surrender that deeply, that is a very sacred experience.
Mhm.
And yeah, the fluid isn't just pee, but some can come out in ejaculation. The orgasm is not the same as the ejaculation. They can happen separately. The orgasm can happen without the ejaculation, or it can happen with it, or you can ejaculate and not have an orgasm. There's lots of variations there. I've found that they're two completely separate events for myself. And I'd say that many women also would say the same. If a woman is what I call a squirter, meaning that she squirts all the time, and if you're a guy out there and you're like, yeah, my wife squirts all the time, then you know what I mean. It's just normal for her. That doesn't mean she's having an orgasm, though. It just means she's a squirter.
Gotcha. So it's
Yeah.
possible to squirt without the pleasurable, satisfying sensation that accompanies it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does feel good, but it's not like a full blown orgasmic experience. It feels like a release, which is nice. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily the same as the orgasmic experience that I get from G-spot stimulation.
Gotcha. I read up a little bit on this. It's the Skene's gland that fills with liquid and it empties into the urethral tract. So the liquid does come out of the urethra, but it's not like a woman can empty her bladder before sex, like she can use the bathroom before sex and still squirt. So it's not necessarily like urine. It's this liquid built up from the stimulation in this part of the body.
Yep, exactly. Just like a man's ejaculation.
That's right. In fact, the Skene's gland is the homologue of the male prostate.
Exactly.
So, like men really like prostate stimulation and can ejaculate just from prostate stimulation alone. It's like, and to me, it's like a corollary, kind of like that. I think,
Yeah,
but a
absolutely.
lot more fun.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both fun, right? I think it's more fun. Great, great.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So we've talked about for first timers how to locate it. We've set the stage that this isn't like a 2-minute ordeal. You get aroused, and this is a commitment. And too much pressure may not feel good. Too little pressure may not feel good. So, how to really read your spouse here and communicate, and just be present. So, as a woman being stimulated, there does come a point where you feel like you kind of got to pee,
Mm.
right? And that can be kind of a surprise, especially during sex when you're like, "I don't want to have an accident here." How do you coach a woman through that?
Yeah, that's normal. The bearing down response is very common. I have squirted without that sensation of needing to bear down and with it. It
Mhm.
goes both ways for me. I don't know about everyone else, but I know that when I'm teaching clients to have different types of orgasms, that if you apply more pressure and you get to that sensation of wanting to bear down, that is the easier way to teach it. And I think once that happens, it kind of unlocks a portal of your G spot knowing what to do so that consecutive experiences of it may not require so much stimulation because that first time it's like this, neurons that wire together fire together. It's this whole experience of your body doing something that has never done before. And I think that the easiest way to teach it is to teach it with proper stimulation, with a lot of pressure, and it usually takes a while, and eventually you'll get to that experience of feeling like you have to pee and bear down, and then it happens. You have that orgasmic experience. Sometimes concurrently, you'll also ejaculate from that experience. And after that, who knows? It could be really easy for you.
Great. When you say bear down, I think about, like, pushing out a baby. Is it a similar kind of a feel then?
It is. Yeah. I've birthed two babies naturally, and it's absolutely like that, like pushing and bearing down.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So which sex positions work really well for couples if they want to do more G-spot play?
Yeah. If you're not using fingers or a G spotter tool and you want G spot stimulation, you can try stimulation with a penis. The best way to do that is when there are really two ways that I found are really good. The first is when your hips are able to kind of free for all. So think of a
I
coffee table.
I'm thinking like hula hoop when you said that.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So you want them to be able to undulate and move
Uh-huh.
freely. Think of a coffee table. If you are doing dips on a coffee table, you know that
Uh-huh.
exercise where
So you're
you're
sitting in
flipping
front
your
of the
arms.
coffee You're sitting in front of the coffee table, coffee behind
Yes.
is that
Yes.
your back? Okay.
Coffee table's behind you,
Uh-huh.
you've got your arms holding your top half up, and you've
Mhm.
got your feet spread out like you're in a squatting position. That's
Uh-huh.
how I have made it happen the easiest. And that allows me to get into that squatting position where I feel like I can bear down. And when I can go there, it does happen quicker and more easily because I have control over it. Whereas someone that's just stimulating me with their fingers or a tool, I don't have any control over what
Mhm.
they're doing. Have to surrender to what they're doing, and it's easier for me to do now. But most women struggle with fully surrendering to their partner in the first place. That's why I would suggest doing a position where you have more control over the experience and not just relying on your partner to provide the stimulation. Because when you're in that coffee table position,
Mhm.
you do have a lot more control of what's happening inside.
I something about what you said is just not really clear to me. How are you doing this without a partner stimulating you or without using a tool?
No, no, no. Your partner is stimulating you, but you have a little more control over how
Oh,
deep they're going.
you're calling the shots, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Gotcha.
kinda like when a woman is on top of her man, she has more control over how much clitoral stimulation she's getting. It's the same thing with the G-spot.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it just means
Right.
that your hips, maybe the depth that he's going, if it's too much or not enough, you can move your hips easily in that position to accommodate for what is working for you and the pleasure that you're getting. I think that makes it more simple for a woman to figure out her G spot pleasure herself than to just make her man figure it out for her and be like, yeah, just figure it out. I don't know. I mean, you could do that. Maybe you get lucky the first time, but you want to take control of your pleasure also and not rely on your partner to figure all of that out for you because it can leave them feeling sometimes helpless. So definitely take control over what you can have control over. And if it helps to be in a position where you do have more control over the pressure, the speed, all of that, then by all means go for it.
Gotcha. Great. Very good. Okay. How about on a bed? How do most couples do that on the bed?
Yeah. If you are in a squatting position on top of your man, that can definitely provide more stimulation. It's not going to be direct.
Mhm.
Some women who are squirters and they squirt all the time, that's all that's required for them. But that's probably something, if you're one of those women, that's probably something that you've experienced for a long time. And
Mhm.
that's just what happens. And that's just your body. If that's not you and you have been stimulated uh, on your G spot, but you want your man to be inside of you, then I think the best position to continue receiving G spot stimulation is when you're squatting on top of him, if that's comfortable for you. For some people, you can't comfortably squat. I get it. I've done yoga for 20 something years, so it's totally easy for me. Other people is not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It just kind of depends on your body and how
uh
flexible you are.
Right. We can
Yeah.
grab the headboard or something like that on the bed to help
Yeah.
y
Yeah. Yeah.
or move to the floor next to the bed and use the bed for support, but let's find a way to make this work.
Yep.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Alright. Now the liquid is quite thin. It can go through sheets pretty easily. What tips do you have for people who are afraid of soiling bed sheets or the floor or something like that? They'd hate to call the carpet cleaner over. You don't have any pets.
Oh, man.
Uh-huh.
Well, fortunately, it's 2024 and they make something for everything.
Uh-huh.
You can absolutely buy I don't even know what they're called because I don't have one because I don't really care. But some people definitely do. And there's the soaper sheets, I guess is what they're called. Or
Mhm.
yeah, I honestly don't even know. But you can buy a pad that will absorb all of the liquid that you can literally just throw right in the washing machine after, and it won't get the rest of your bed wet.
Great. Very good, very good. Okay. Tilly, can every woman have a G-spot orgasm?
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I would say probably not. And anyone that claims that all women can experience all things, I think,
And they should, and they're broken if they can't.
yeah, I think is a flat
Uh-huh.
out liar because you don't know that woman's anatomy. You don't know what accidents she may have had or whatever or whatnot. And everyone's anatomy is so vastly different. The way that the clitoris is situated in your body is completely different than someone else. And I know for a fact that some women, it's just easy for them to come because their clitoris is situated so close in a way that the stimulation hits them just right. And some women, it is further back. And while the clitoris isn't completely responsible for G spot pleasure, it definitely facilitates it. The legs and the cuirae of the clitoris surround the G spot tissue, and any sort of blended pleasure, clitoral pleasure combined with G spot pleasure is going to make it very likely easier for that to happen. And that's why I say I don't know that it's possible for everyone. I can't speak for everyone's bodies, but I think it's definitely worth a shot. I wouldn't make it an absolute mission to be like, "Huh, I gotta have that G spot orgasm or I'm a failure as a woman," because I think you're setting yourself up for the exact thing that keeps us from experiencing orgasms is a goal.
Yes, absolutely. We need to underline that and highlight it. You can't
Yeah.
be so goal-oriented with orgasm. It's
Mm-mm.
it doesn't work that way.
It is literally the irony of
Uh,
learning to have different types of orgasms in different ways is that you have to stop trying and you have to meet your body where it's at and allow yourself to feel whatever it is you're feeling, even if you don't like it.
mhm.
And that's what I teach women to do because I get a lot of ambitious women who come in and they're like, "I've gotta have this type of orgasm or be able to do this cool sex thing or I'm a failure." And I'm like, "Whoa, babe, chill." Like, let's take a step back. Uh can we be at peace with our body? Can we accept our body the way it is? Can we accept pleasure in the way that we receive it without judging it? Because that's when your body will open to more. But the more judgment you have on it, the more you try to make it do something just because you want to be able to check off a box, the more your body's going to be like, well, I ain't opening up to you today.
Right. That is so good. We do need to be at peace with the pleasure that we do have.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the lines of being more joyful and have more fun? Kinda like that woman in your, workshop, right? Like,
Yeah.
have just be more joyful and free with enjoying the gift of sexuality and pleasure.
Yeah. That's when I work with couples. That's one of the first things that we have to get over is the seriousness and what they have made sex mean for their relationship. And often it's something that's really heavy and not fun to think
Uh-huh.
about.
Or it's a
If they're,
power struggle, like, who's gonna prevail here? It's a
oh,
battle, uh-huh, yeah.
oh my gosh, yes. Sex is literally the ultimate adult playground. If it doesn't feel like you're playing and you're having fun and you're out to recess just for the heck of it, because that's what you do as kids. If it doesn't feel like that, you are not doing it right. You have made it mean way more things than it needs to mean. You've created a story around it that's probably shutting down you from the pleasure that you want to experience, the intimacy you want to experience, and you got to get over it.
Mhm. Mhm. That's
Yeah.
good. Great. Let's say you're in a relationship and one of you really wants to try G-spot stimulation and the other is pretty ambivalent about it. How do you recommend the person is really interested in it going about starting a conversation with their ambivalent spouse about trying this?
Mm. This is good. This happens quite frequently when one of you is in more of an adventurous or curious stage of your sexuality and the other isn't there. They're in some other stage of their sexuality. And the one who is in that curious, adventurous stage, recognizing that, okay, maybe my partner isn't in that stage because we do all go through stages. There's transformational, there's healing, and there's resting and there's adventurous and curious. If you're wanting to try new things, it's because you are in the adventurous, curious, and your partner, if they're not there too, that's because they're not. So having compassion for what stage of sexuality your partner is in. If your female partner just had a baby and she's going through that, she's in like a resting phase of her sexuality. She's probably gonna be up for that. But if she is, just approaching it with curiosity and letting your partner know why you want to try these new things. Maybe because it is you're bored. Maybe because you are feeling that it's becoming monotonous, and that's okay to talk to your partner about that and let them know. It's very important that they know. If they don't, then how are you going to have an outlet for that? But
Hmm.
most people stop talking about sex. So if we don't talk about it, well, we have nowhere to start. We have to actually make our desires known. So try it. And if they're open to it, great. And if they're not, then, you have to honor where your partner is at. And they might not be in the same stage as you.
Great. Very good. All right. So a couple is trying this. They're having a little bit of success. They're being more joyful and having fun in the bedroom. And now they're ready to take things to the next level. What is your black belt sex tip?
Oh man, there's so many. Ah, Women, the best sex tip I could give you is to start a jade egg practice. Jade,
Okay.
ADE, or yoni egg practice, whatever you want to call it. People call it both the things. And I don't necessarily say that that's a tip. Maybe it is a tip. It's a tip that, hey, go check it out because it does do fascinating things in your experience of pleasure in terms of increasing it and being less desensitized and more sensitive. But it really is phenomenal to learn how to use the jade egg to increase your capacity for pleasure. And for men, presence. Most women just want you to be more present, to be more with them and their full expression of the sexuality. It is so vulnerable for women to fully surrender, and they won't feel like they can if they don't feel like you're fully there with them. If you're thinking about something else, if you're thinking about some visual that has nothing to do with what's actually going on in the moment, presence is the black belt tip for my guys because that's the one thing that's going to change everything.
That is so good. Thank you. Where can people go to learn more about you and your workshops?
The Multi Orgasmic Millionaire Podcast or tillystorm.com.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan.